Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Welcome back to the show, where we interview the nation's leading real estate entrepreneurs and those that service the real estate industry. If you're joining us for the second, third, or 100th time, welcome back. And if you're joining us for the first time, you're in for a real treat today. I got Bob Frady in the house. Bob is as a recent profile would say, a disruptor. He has a long background in technology, has built and currently is still in one of his companies, but exited 2 companies, and has a little bit of a real estate background, but has a specific tool that can really save you guys when you're buying some properties. And we're going to talk about that today and talk about Bob's experience just in business and life and go all over. Sure. So just before we get started, remember that at Investor Fuel, we help real estate investors, service providers, and real estate entrepreneurs 2 to 5x their businesses, which allows them to build the businesses they've always wanted, to allow them to live the lives they've always dreamed of. That being said, Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're absolutely welcome. I'm glad to have a conversation with you today. I had a really nice time visiting with you pre-show, and so I think for everybody's sake, obviously I got a little bit of background, but can you just share a little bit about yourself and how you got started and what you're doing now and how you got to where you're at?
Sure. I'm just a kid from Boston who grew up in a triple-decker house. You know, my dad was a landlord and rented out 2 other places. So pretty lower middle class background from Boston. I was good in school, and I always liked data. So I've been working with data for most of my career. Some of it's geospatial, some of it's, point data, all sorts of different types of data. And went through the whole corporate thing and did well, but kept getting fired. Because I would get to a point to say, we can do this. I know we're doing this, but we can do this. Let's do this. And they would say, just stick to this. And I would say something inappropriate, like a street thug from Boston would say, and then that would be shown the door. So I started one business back in the early 2000s. It was a consulting business. It did really well, but I figured that starting business wasn't for me. I didn't think I had the entrepreneurial gene because I had a little baby at the time, and that was tough. So fast forward, I built Live Nation's email marketing system. I built a lot of marketing stuff and did a lot of cool things. And about 10 years ago, I met up with a couple friends of mine, and we talked about how risk assessment for properties really hasn't changed very much in the last 15 or 20 years, and we thought we could do it better. So we built a company, and finally I was 52 when I started the company and said, screw corporate America, I'm going to do my own thing. Waiting to get fired is no way to live. So I'd rather fall on my own sword than have somebody chop my head off with their sword. And started Hazard Hub, which was risk assessment. So floods, wildfires, wind, hail, tornado, all that stuff. We did and sold that data to insurance companies. Built it up, was doing great. Big company came along, said,
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
we're going to buy you. So we did. Sold it about 4 years ago. And when I sold that house, I bought a house here in Edina, Minnesota, and didn't know much about Edina, but I knew a lot about the data and tried to build some knowledge about this property. And I knew that there was a radon risk, which hadn't been disclosed. I knew that there was subjected to ice dams, which wasn't disclosed. And I knew that there was lead-based paint and asbestos in this house that wasn't disclosed. And so used all that data and said, I'm going to give you 10% less than the listing price. And they took it, which saved me a big old pile of cash, which was nice because it's a beautiful house. It's a beautiful location. And then I thought, well, why can't everybody have this? Why should I just be able to have this because I have all the data? So I looked around and I was looking for like a Carfax for houses, and there wasn't one. So I built it, and that's Property Lens. And so now anybody can go into Property Lens, type in an address, and get a report on that property, customized to that property for only $69, which is nice.
Which is pretty incredible. Now, I want to go back to something where you mentioned you were going through corporate America and you had started something with consulting back in the day, but you didn't really start your first, tell me if I'm wrong here, you didn't start your first success till you were 52?
Well, I didn't. The consulting business was me and two other partners, and I was in my 30s at the time. And it was successful, but it wasn't successful for me. Those guys did great. But the first time I was actually CEO of a company I was 52 years old. Yeah.
So what was the gap between consulting and 52? Were you back in corporate America, or what did that look like?
Yep. Like I said, I ran direct mail marketing for IndyMac Bank before they blew up. I was gone by that time. I ran email marketing for Live Nation, built the concert company, which was awesome because I was a music kid growing up. Mm-hmm. I worked for Expedia. I did their digital outbound marketing for a thankfully short time, and did a lot of technology-driven stuff. How do you marry data and technology together was kind of my specialty. Mm-hmm. And then, as we talked about before the show, I have a habit of getting fired. And so I got fired one more time, and it's like, okay, my little side hustle, Hazard Hub's now becoming my full-time gig. Had to make it work. And it, like, knock on wood, it did.
Well, it's just, I've never related to any, I don't think I've ever met anybody in my life that I related to more on that front, because I wouldn't say that I'm high profile enough to have a profile done on me just yet, but I've had over 20 jobs in the last 10 years of my life. And a lot of it is because I go in and I act like an entrepreneur and I try to solve problems. And what ends up happening is people get very uncomfortable with that because humans aren't used to change, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. I tell you what, that is exactly what happened to me multiple times. And it's really distressing when it happens, because you're like, I'm not coming at this to try to hurt anybody.
Right.
I'm coming at this to try to be even better.
Right.
And, corporate politics is my least favorite sport. I'm not good at it. It's worse. There's golf, and then there's corporate politics. So not good at either one of them.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, I'm telling you, seriously, I really, really completely understand where you're coming from. And it doesn't do you any good as well from a mental standpoint, because then you start questioning, like, am I really as good as I think I am?
Oh, there's always that question. You always wonder whether, somebody's going to pull back the curtain and it's like there's nothing there. But at the same time, one of the things I did when I became an entrepreneur is I had to ignore the noise.
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency. It's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
I had to say, I really believe in what we're doing. And everybody else who's a hater, as Taylor Swift would say, haters gonna hate. And you could tell I had a teenage daughter at the time I started the business.
I love it.
And just got to ignore them, and if Taylor Swift can do it, I could do it. So she can play guitar and I can't do that. But that's the one thing I can do that she can do, is I can ignore the haters.
I love that. That's so great. My team will have to take a clip of that and make that into a deal of Bob Frady going, haters gonna hate. Love it. So you've started Property Lens.
Yep.
You're full swing into this now. You exited Hazard Hub with a fat check. He hasn't told me what he made from it. I just assume. And
you're right.
So now what's the vision with Property Lens moving forward, let's say, and I'm sure you might agree with this, that it's very difficult anymore to plan more than really 18 months in advance in business, just because of how quick information changes and AI and all these things come into change. So what does the next 18 months look like for Property Lens, and what's kind of the grand overall vision? To exit that company as well, or use this as a legacy play?
I think that we're still figuring that part out. Of course, if you build, one of the things that we did in the last company is we were determined that if we build it, it's for sale. Every house is for sale. It's just a matter of the price.
Sure.
And that's the theory that we brought to business. So, that's the theory I have with this business as well. But the thing the reason why we started this business is because sellers know this and buyers know this, and we're trying to shrink that gap. So we do that through information right now. Just gather tons and tons of data and put it all together, put a lot of knowledge around it, and try to come up with answers that help people make better decisions. We know, as everybody knows, that sometimes data isn't always correct as it appears to be. So the next step is for people to interact with that data. So we call the first piece information, which is the first I. The second I is interaction. So the we might show the HVA system as being 18 years old, but it was replaced and there was no permit and no one ever talked about it maybe 5 years ago. So to interact with that data and then recalculate all the things we think about that house. And then long term, the third I is what we call immersion, where you take your phone and you walk through the property and you do a self-inspection when you're touring the house. And we'll do things like, how old is that electrical panel? Is it still in code? Does it need replacing? Take a look at the HVA systems and say, is it on a recall? Is there anything there that we can do to help the buyer make a better decision? And so that's the 18-month plan in a nutshell.
Wow. How dynamic of a team do you have to have in order to build something like this? Are you the sole founder and it's just you sitting behind a keyboard all day coding stuff, or what does that look like?
I cannot code to save my life. It's funny, I've been working in technical roles for 20 years and I don't code. It's like Rick Rubin, and I'm not saying that because of your beard, but Rick Rubin is a genius at producing rock acts, but he doesn't play an instrument. He doesn't read music because he knows what to do. He doesn't turn the buttons, but he knows what buttons need to be turned. That's kind of how I view my role. Is I need a team that can be very flexible, and there's 9 of us all together. There's 2 business people and 7 developers, and it's challenging for my developers because every Monday we have our team meeting and they're like, what have you thought of this week that we're going to have to work on? I'm like, okay, I hear your message. I'm going to slow down a little bit. But you constantly have to.
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
You constantly have to invent and you constantly have to stay ahead of where people are, or else some big old company can just come and try to replicate what you're doing. So, it's like a speedboat. You have to be able to drive it very fast and very nimbly, or else some oil tanker is just going to come and cut you off. So you need a team that's dynamic, and finding a team that's dynamic is very difficult.
What are some of the challenges with that you've gone through?
Well, I think, one of the things we believe in at Property Lens is that it's okay to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, it means you're not trying hard enough to do cool new things that haven't been done. And what we found is that that's easy to say, but it's really hard for people to accept. I personally blame school. Because when you're in school, you don't get rewarded for getting the wrong answer. You get punished for getting the wrong answer. And then you go into corporations where you get punished for giving the wrong answer. And to us, the wrong answer might lead you to the right answer. So you got to go through that. Just like in selling, it's like you got to go through the no's before you get to the yes. And those no's are mistakes, if you will. So people aren't used to having the freedom to make those mistakes. Now, if you make the same mistake 10 times, then we got a problem. But if you make a mistake in order to get to a higher place, you're not really making a mistake. But people view it that way. That's the hardest part of an environment where you say it's okay to make mistakes. When the mistakes actually happen, what do you do? And, sometimes you close the door and you mutter to yourself, and then you come back and you're like, good job. So it's people aren't used to it. And I took it for granted for such a long time that people would love it. And you have to find the people who are comfortable in that situation, or train up people to be comfortable in that situation. And it's hard.
So like you mentioned Rick Rubin, for example, and being an orchestrator, what would you say is your greatest gift set within business?
My dad was from Ware Shoals, South Carolina. Was from outside of where he grew up, in the country where even hillbillies were like, damn, that's country. and so he was not well educated. He's a smart guy, but he just didn't have any formal schooling. I think
Sure.
8th grade he dropped out. And so I would have to take all these really complex things that I was working on and try to explain it to him. And it gave me the practice in making the complex understandable. I didn't simplify it because he wasn't a dummy, but I made it more explainable. And so what I found is that I can take really complex things and break them down in a way that people understand. And once people understand what you're trying to do, then they can add all the complexity they want back into it, because I'm a communicator among different groups. Like, I understand sales, I understand marketing, I understand technology, I understand all of it. I don't specialize in any of it, but I understand it enough to know how it all works together. So I guess I would be the puzzle master, if you would.
You bet. Are you a good salesperson?
I would like to think so. I also think that there are some people who are just forces of nature. Like, I have a friend of mine who is a big muckety-muck at Salesforce, and she's a force of nature. Like, when she speaks, you know that that's the right thing to do, even if you don't know if it's the right thing to do. She brings that kind of energy and confidence to the table. I don't operate like that. I operate much more, we're going to make this decision together, but I'm going to lead you to a place where we make it together. So I guess I would say I'm pretty good, but there are a lot of people who are way better than me. There's a lot of people who are way worse too. I'm on the upside of the curve.
Yeah, sure. You're on the far end of the bell curve in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But there are some amazing people out there who have skills that I only seek to emulate or hire them because they're so good.
So great transition, actually. So because for what you're doing, you're building new things, like you're bringing new value to the world that the world hasn't seen yet. Mm-hmm. So how important has finding people that have skills that you want to emulate been in terms of your own growth? Do you have a mentor in your business? Like, where do you go to personally continue growing?
It's unfortunate. I was on a panel at some event a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me this question, and I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have someone who was my Sherpa, if you will. So I try to work with entrepreneurs and startup folks and say, hey, listen, if you want to talk, then just let me know, and I'm happy to talk to you. I said, I'll give you any advice you want short of money. I won't do that. So I try to be a mentor to the younger generation, but for my own fuel tank, I love to read biographies of people who have struggled to their way to success and how their perseverance wins. I've read the biography of Ronnie James Dio, who was the lead singer of Black Sabbath for a while, and it was Dio, this guy, he invented this.
Yeah.
And, he lost his best friend at a gig and was 38 years old and broke when he finally became Dio. And I'm like, that's a guy with perseverance. And I always want to emulate people with perseverance. I love Winston Churchill, not because he was drunk every day during the war, but because he persevered. Perseverance when it's funny when you ask about the superpower, it's I think resiliency. I got good bounce. It's like you can knock me down, I will get up again, and I'll come back harder than when I went down. So yeah, that's my power. The other stuff is just sort of window dressing that puts that to work, but it's perseverance.
Where does the resilience and the perseverance come from? Where does that stem from?
That's a good one. I don't know. When I was a kid, I was the youngest of 6. It was a 1,100 square foot apartment with 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 6 kids, 2 parents, and a dog. So there was a lot of traffic in the house. So I had to negotiate my way through my family. And then my mom passed away when I was a kid. And so I had to fend for myself. And so the saving grace is that I was good in school. And I learned, bad things can happen to you. Losing your mom when you're a teenager is really difficult. And some people just never get out of it. They never recover. But I looked at it like, okay, now what am I going to do? And now how do I, make things better? And so when I went to college, I wasn't the best student when I first started. And I got put on academic notice after my freshman year. And I ended up graduating with honors. It's like, because you just keep, the things, I learned early, bad things happen to you. So what? What are you going to do about it? And if you're not going to do anything about it but complain, then you get what you get. But if you take that and use it as fuel, then you can get a lot more than if you just sit there and don't do anything. So I would say it's from my childhood probably, and just genetics is probably the other part.
So have you pretty much always had to be a problem solver?
Oh yeah. I had to be a negotiator. As the youngest of 6, and with sick mom and dad who liked the sauce a little bit too much, I always had to be aware of what was going on at all times, because you never knew when that volatility was going to come. So you get very good in a crisis, but you figure out eventually that crises aren't necessarily the best things in the world for you. So I've always had to be a negotiator, and I like it. It's fun. I'm a pretty funny guy. I'd say, according to some people might not think so. And I like to laugh and I like for people to be successful because I've seen what happens when people fall into the darkness. I don't want people falling into the darkness if I can help it.
Mm. If you had to go back to, let's just call it the beginning of your career, maybe even the beginning of your consultancy, because that was like your first real stab, right?
Yep.
But if you went back and you had to start it all over, but you could take everything that you've learned since when you started to now, what would you do different and what would you do the same?
I would say, it's hard to say that you do anything differently because I've ended up in a spot that I'm pretty happy with. So if you change something at the beginning, maybe you're not so happy at this point. But assuming I'd be as happy as I am now, I would say I would have believed in myself much more than I did when I was younger. When I was younger, it was always, talk about imposter syndrome. I was always sort of like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't do that. Why am I doing this? Until finally, I did have a friend of mine who said, you're an entrepreneur, just go be an entrepreneur. Just screw everybody, just go do it. And finally heeded that advice and found out that I'm really good at it. I really like it, and it suits me well. And now I feel like I can go in and run almost any business and bring some level of success to it. Now, whether I can or not, who knows? Maybe that's just ego talking. But when I was younger, I would have pulled the plug much earlier in the process than I would now because I'm so much more comfortable with who I am as a person. And I believe in myself so much more than I ever did when I was younger.
When did that change for you?
I think it's when I was working at Live Nation. So I was older when this happened. And people told me, I made a career out of doing what people told me I couldn't do. A little hate fuel goes a long way. But at that point, I kind of figured every time people tell me I can't do something and then I do it, the first time you think it's an accident. The second time, maybe you got lucky. The third time was at Live Nation. And I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. And the problem is that it turned me into a little bit of a dickhead because I got a little too confident. I overshot the runway a little bit, and then I had to bring it back and settle it down. But yeah, I would say I didn't really learn that lesson until I was in my 40s and set the tone for the next generation of yourself. It's like if people think of themselves as the same person their whole life, and you're not. You have a lot of consistencies. You look a lot alike, but, you're different people at different stages, and you have the opportunity at any time in your life to change that stage through will. And there's always reasons why you can't. There's always excuses why you can't. But I always looked at it like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try something new. And, resiliency gets you through.
Love that. Let me ask you one more technical thing about property lens before we kind of wrap up, because we went on a totally different direction than I expected.
I feel like I owe you $250 for therapy sessions.
Some of these shows go that way. So let me move back a little bit. So because a lot of our listeners are investors, right? We've got a lot about business and life and all of that here today. But with property lens specifically, what are some use cases for investors that are looking at properties? I would say, maybe your fix and flipper, your wholesaler, your buy and hold guy, like that kind of niche.
Sure. There are really two. The first is if you're looking to buy a property. The way we think about it is sellers know this, buyers know this. We're just trying to shrink that gap. And a lot of times as the buyer, you only know what the seller's agent or what the buyer's agent tells you. So we're the third party that says, hey, we've done the work of pulling all this stuff together that they're not necessarily going to give you. Here it is. So you walk in the door with a complete pregame analysis of the property, which gives you some level of advantage in deciding how much you want to pay for it or whether you want to buy it at all. Now, you still do your inspection. You still do all that stuff on the back end, but at least you walk in knowing here's the potential landmines in this place, and is it worth the money that they're asking for it? Now, if it's a competitive market, that might be a different story, but at least you go in and get that peace of mind knowing, hey, someone's taking a look at this. Here's all the data that can be found on this property. And here's the story of the history of this property. So from the buyer's standpoint, it's about pricing advantage and peace of mind. From a seller's standpoint, if you're selling a property, you want to make sure that you get the report to know what people are going to be looking for. And one of the things that we do is, especially in residential real estate, we mine the description that you supply. So if you've updated the HVA system in 2022 and you put it in the listing, we'll show it as updated in the system, even if there's no permit for it. Because while a permit is generally required, not every municipality requires permits. Mm-hmm. So we'll use both of those sources to show off the property. One of the things when we talk about interaction is we want the ability for people to go in and upload receipts that they've done on the house to show off the house, because we think the best cared for houses are going to be the ones that get the best price in the marketplace. So it's more tuned currently towards the buyer, but we also know that the seller is a little bit more of a near-term future market for us. It's like I bought a car in 1996, my first fancy job. I saw this BMW. I was like, this is awesome. And so I ran this brand new thing called the Carfax report, and there was nothing on it. And I was like, great, talk about peace of mind. I bought the car, is awesome. And now you go into a car dealership, and if there's a used car, it automatically comes with the property lens. With the Carfax button on it to say, hey, here's the Carfax report. They give it to you as part of it.
Right.
We'd like to see that same progression in our business, but for right now, we're focused on the people actually executing the transaction.
You bet. Love it. Well, go look him up, y'all. And Bob, if anybody does want to do that, wants to connect with you for more, or just see what you're working on, where should they go for that?
You can see us on the socials. I'm at Bob Frady at LinkedIn, and then all of the company stuff is called My Property Lens. So on the Facebook, on the Meta, all those channels, you'll see My Property Lens. If you want to reach me personally, it's just bob@propertylens.com. I'm always happy to chat about what we're doing and talk to other entrepreneurs about maybe some of the journeys that they've had, because you just learn. Like I said, a lot of people don't have mentors, and it's not that like I'm volunteering, but I'm always happy to talk to people about the journey.
You bet. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you got as much value out of it as I did, I know you'll be off. I'm gonna
cry after this show. I think I'm gonna need to lie down, shed a couple tears.
Oh man, no, hopefully not. Oh man, I'll see you next week for your session. Same time.
Same time next week.
All right. Thanks so much for being here, Bob. We appreciate it. See y'all in the next one.
It's my pleasure, Stephen. All right, take care.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.